The sunlight hit the table just right, casting a long shadow over the corner seat of the boardroom. That seat used to be our father's, before he stepped down, before everything shifted. I had just finished pouring coffee into the same stainless steel thermos I used for 15 years. I always arrived early, not out of obligation, but out of rhythm. That was how my day started. Coffee, calendar, reports, then people. When my younger brother walked into the room, something in his expression had already changed. His posture, the sharpness in his jawline, the way he avoided looking directly at me. I had seen that look before, in clients who had already made up their minds but were pretending not to. It took him 6 minutes to get to it. "I think it is time you take a step back," he said. No build-up, no transition, no respect for the years between us. Just a straight dive into a sentence that, once spoken, could never be unspoken. I paused, not because I was surprised. I was not, but because something inside me broke in the cleanest way possible. No drama, no burst of emotion, just a snap. It was not even anger. It was recognition. My name is Stephen, and I helped build our family business from a struggling 3-client operation in a cramped warehouse to a multi-regional supplier, with over 200 employees. I had been here since our father used to run meetings from the front seat of his old pickup truck. I had handled client meltdowns, legal challenges, labor negotiations, and even a fire. Literally. There was an actual fire in 2011. I stayed on site for 2 straight days with a generator and a folding chair, and now my brother, 10 years younger than me, fresh off an MBA and a 6-month stint abroad, was sitting across from me with perfectly ironed cuffs, telling me to step aside like I was part of the furniture that came with the building. It should have stung. It did not, because I saw it coming. I just did not expect it to come so fast, so cleanly, and so void of gratitude. I leaned back in my chair. Let him finish the monologue he had probably practiced for days. He used the words direction, restructure, and new phase like placeholders for what he really wanted to say. You are in the way now. He did not say he was sorry. He did not say thank you. Just that they were moving forward. They, not even we. And when he slid the folder across the table, a formal exit package, typed up and branded with our company logo, it hit me. Not the loss, not the betrayal, but the comedy of it. He had waited until the first morning he officially became Chief Executive Officer to do this. Not a day before, not a week after. The very moment the ink dried, he pulled the trigger, and I laughed, not loudly, not maniacally, just enough for him to freeze, confused. He probably expected me to argue, or protest, or storm out. But I laughed because it was funny. It was exactly the kind of clean-cut move that looks strategic in a business textbook, but hollow in real life. "Is something funny?" he asked. I just looked at him and said, "I was wondering what version of this story you will tell yourself in 10 years. He did not respond. What people outside the family never understood was that this business was not just a company to us. It was our father's life work. And to me, it had become something even more personal. It was the only consistent thing in a world that had gone through divorces, illnesses, relocations, and death. The company was home. It was purpose. And for a long time, it was the place where I believed legacy mattered. My brother did not see it that way. He saw numbers, growth charts, comparisons to peers in his executive cohort. And somewhere along the line, he began to view me not as an anchor but as an obstacle. He had the board's support, of course. Most of them were either too tired or too indifferent to push back. One had been our father's friend for years, but even he barely made eye contact as I walked out that morning. What surprised me more than the decision itself was how little anyone said. No farewell, no acknowledgement. Just silence and a handshake. From one of the HR officers I barely knew, I had given half my life to that company. My weekends, my holidays, my sleep. I built systems, trained employees, signed off on millions in contracts, and once even covered payroll with my own savings to keep things afloat. But in the end, none of it mattered. What mattered was that my last name was no longer enough to guarantee belonging. Not when power had shifted. You know what I remember most from that morning? Not the folder. Not the conversation. But the way the elevator doors closed behind me. The sound it made. Like punctuation. Outside, the parking lot looked the same as it always did. Cars aligned, people walking to their shifts. No one knew what had just happened. The world kept moving, as it always does. I sat in my car, let the engine run, and stared at the building for exactly 5 minutes. Then I drove home. No calls, no explanations, no dramatic announcements on social media, just silence. That night I cooked dinner in my own kitchen for the first time in months. Real dinner, not leftovers or takeout. I cut the vegetables too slowly, not because I was tired, but because I had nowhere else to be. There is a strange clarity that comes when something collapses, not with a bang, but with precision. Over the next few days, word got around. Some colleagues reached out, carefully. A few former clients sent messages. One even asked if I was consulting now. I ignored most of it, not out of pride, but because I needed a moment to figure out what was real. I did not grieve. I did not wallow. I observed, because what happened in that boardroom was not a tragedy. It was a pattern, one that repeats itself in families, in companies, in any place where power and ego collide. My brother was not evil. He was just efficient. He had waited for the perfect moment, the day he stepped into control. And he did what he thought was smart: eliminate perceived threats, start fresh, show authority. But what he forgot was something our father told us when we were kids, sitting on milk crates in the back warehouse. He said, "In business, anyone can take the wheel. The hard part is not driving. It is keeping people in the car." And now he was at the wheel. Alone. The next week I met with a former client for lunch. Just a friendly catch-up. He asked me, "What happened?" And I told him simply, "I was retired." Unceremoniously. He laughed. Then he said, "We always preferred working with you anyway." That sentence did not change my situation, but it reminded me of something important. History does not erase itself. People remember. They remember how you treated them, how you showed up, how you handled storms. I had no plan. Not yet. But I had something better than a title. I had clarity, and the truth is, I was not angry, not even disappointed. I was free. My brother did not give me that freedom. He simply forced me to recognize it. And that is when I really started to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I realized something he had not. He had fired the one person who still cared about the business more than his own name. And no spreadsheet would fix that. Now the question was not whether I would get even. It was whether I would even bother. The first thing I noticed after leaving the company was how loud the silence became. There is a certain kind of noise that fills your life when you are responsible for people, deadlines, and operations every day. Phones buzzing, meetings stacking, issues waiting. And suddenly, it is gone. That silence? It is not peace. Not at first. It is disorientation. For 3 days, I did nothing. No plans, no research, no new notebooks. Just silence, walks around the block, and coffee I actually had time to finish. On the 4th day, I got a text from someone I had not heard from in years. He used to be our logistics partner during a rough stretch, back when shipments were delayed, and our warehouse space was a revolving door of mistakes. His message was simple. "Heard what happened. If you ever want to talk shop, call me." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Not because I was hesitant to talk, but because I did not want to become someone who clings to what is gone. That is the trap. You get fired, you start plotting revenge, or you spend months trying to prove they were wrong. I was not interested in either. What I did want, though, was to understand something more complicated. How did we get here? How does a family business, built with sweat, long nights, and shared struggle, become cold enough that one brother removes the other like outdated software? So I started writing things down. Not a memoir, not a revenge list, just details. I documented what worked, what failed, what patterns I had seen over the years in how people handled growth and pressure. Somewhere around page 20, I realized something that changed everything. My brother had not fired me out of malice. He fired me out of fear. I was a mirror, a reminder of how things used to be done. A slower, steadier approach. Measured, relational. He wanted rapid expansion. I wanted sustainable scaling. He wanted clean numbers. I wanted customer longevity. We were not in conflict because of personality. We were in conflict because of philosophy. And once I saw that clearly, something shifted. That was the first time I opened my laptop, not to check emails or respond to old contacts, but to create a blank spreadsheet with one question at the top. What would I do differently if I could do it alone? I did not think of it as starting a company. I thought of it as answering a question I had never allowed myself to ask. It started slow. One idea led to another. Processes, principles. What I liked, what I knew clients respected, what most people in our industry got wrong. I let it build. And then something strange happened. I got a voicemail from one of our oldest clients. I could hear the discomfort in his voice. He said, "I know it is probably not appropriate to call, but I just want to say, we miss your presence." That is all he said. But that call did something to me. It reminded me that trust is not erased by titles. That reputation, once earned, has a long shelf life. Later that week, I had lunch with a vendor I used to work closely with. He had no idea I was no longer with the company. He looked confused when I told him. He said, "Wait, they fired you." I just smiled. I had stopped correcting people by then. I had also stopped explaining. People could think what they wanted. I had no desire to control the narrative because the truth is, silence is underrated. Let people guess. Let them wonder. While I built, while I thought, while I studied, and I was studying not my brother, not the company, but the market. I was watching the moves being made across our sector, the kinds of hires being made, the types of messaging being used in their press releases, the strategies that looked exciting on paper, but hollow underneath. Made notes, not as ammunition, as preparation. There is a difference between revenge and readiness. One drains you, the other sharpens you. One day I drove past the old office. I did not stop, just looked. The building looked the same. But I knew better. A few weeks had passed since my departure, and from what I was hearing, cracks were already starting to show. New strategies launched without ground support. Some longtime employees had quietly left. A few new hires were already struggling to adapt. Again, I did not celebrate. It was not satisfying, because it did not need to be. I had no intention of fighting over the past. I was thinking forward. And then came the dinner that changed everything. A close contact, someone I had known for years, invited me for a quiet meal. He owned a mid-sized firm in a neighboring industry. We had collaborated on a few joint projects before. Good guy, practical, no fluff. Over the second course, he leaned in and said, "I do not know what your plans are, but if you are ever thinking about putting something together, I know 3 clients who would follow you tomorrow." That caught my attention. "Why?" I asked. He said, Because people are tired of consultants who talk a big game and executives who make decisions from spreadsheets. They want someone who has been in the mud, someone who understands operations. That was you. I did not answer him right away. But something in me started moving. Not ambition, not ego, something quieter. Purpose. I drove home that night and stared at the whiteboard in my office, the one I had not used since I left, and I wrote one sentence across the top. What kind of business would I want to run if I owed no one an explanation? The next morning, I got up at 5, poured coffee, and started writing again. This time, it was not just notes. It was structure, frameworks, a concept. I was not trying to compete with the old company. I was not trying to prove anything to my brother. I was building something I believed could work better, smarter, leaner, human, something that did not need permission to exist. By the end of the week, I had a draft, and I started calling people, quietly, one by one, not to pitch, to ask questions, to listen. And I listened hard, to what people needed, what they missed, what they were not getting from the current market. I filled notebooks, and then I sat with it all. This was not going to be fast, it was not going to be loud, but it was going to be real. Because sometimes, the best thing someone can do for you is let you go. Not so you fail, but so you remember who you are when no one else is watching. My brother thought he won. What he gave me, without knowing, it was space. And in that space, I found clarity. The only question now was this: how far could I take it if I never looked back? It started at a kitchen table. Nothing fancy, no pitch deck, no investors. Just a clean notepad, a strong cup of coffee, and a question I kept asking myself every morning. If you were never fired, would you have ever given yourself permission to build this? The truth? Probably not. I would have stayed. Kept things steady, put family harmony over instinct, deferred my gut to keep the peace, pushed through. But something happens when someone takes everything familiar from you, without asking. You stop waiting for permission. That is how I began shaping what would later become something real, not with a vision statement, with silence and clarity. I did not call it a business yet. I just called it an idea worth testing. And the test began with conversations, not leads. Conversations. I called 3 people that week. One was a long-time vendor. Another, a former team member who had left 2 years earlier. And the third was a client who had always asked more questions than most. I asked them all the same thing. If I built something new, what would you need it to solve for you? Not what they thought I should build. Not what they liked about the old company, but what they were missing. What they were tolerating but secretly resented. What they had given up trying to fix. And the answers I got were almost too consistent. Slow responses. Surface-level insights. Vendors who could sell but not solve. A lack of operational honesty. I took notes on everything, and one word kept showing up in different forms. Translation. Everyone was frustrated by how poorly businesses communicated internally. Operations not aligned with sales, technical teams, left out of strategy, and clients stuck in the middle. That was my entry point. That was the gap, so I focused there. I created a framework, simple, flexible, scalable. A service that sat between operations, client needs, and strategic execution. No fluff, no padded decks, no vague terminology, just clear process alignment, delivered by someone who had done it. Once I had the bones in place, I met with someone I trusted implicitly. A financial consultant who had no reason to flatter me. He had seen too many people overestimate what they were building. He read my outline, then looked up and said, "If you keep it lean and start small, this could work. Just do not try to make it look bigger than it is." That advice stayed with me. I did not buy a fancy domain. I did not rent an office space. I used what I had, and then I did something many people skip. I went to a few of my toughest former clients, the ones who were never fully impressed by anything we did, and I asked them to look at the offer, not to buy, to punch holes in it. And they did. They told me what felt confusing, what seemed redundant, what was too polished, what was not honest enough. I made every single change they suggested. By the end of month 1, I had a rough draft of a service I could stand behind. Nothing bloated, no filler, and I was still quiet about it. I was not advertising, I was observing, watching how my brother's version of the company was operating. Not from bitterness, from curiosity. They were moving fast, flashy language, big campaigns, aggressive, pricing. But beneath it, I could tell, they were starting to lose the edge we spent years building. Trust. Trust is not data. It is not margins. It is that moment when a client calls you before they call legal. That was slipping. I started getting casual texts from former colleagues. "Hey, did you see this?" Followed by screenshots of confusing rollouts, or vague policy changes, or someone quitting quietly. And still, I said nothing. Because here is what I knew. Silence scales differently. It builds pressure while everyone else is burning fuel. And I was watching that pressure build. Then, one morning, I got a message from someone unexpected. A former senior manager who had once questioned every decision I made, often out loud. We had respect, but never warmth. His message? Can we meet? No context, no agenda. I agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown. No suits, no ties. Just two people who used to argue about resource allocation now sitting across from each other. With nothing to protect, he leaned back and said, "I do not know what you are building, but whatever it is, I want in." That surprised me. I asked him why. He said, "Because I watched what happened, and I thought, if someone like you can get pushed out, then maybe we all should be asking harder questions." That is when I knew it was time to begin. Not with a launch, not with a press release, but with one client. I went back to that vendor, the one who had texted me after I was fired. We had kept in touch. He had a problem he had been trying to solve for months, process coordination between teams across 2 cities. I offered to help. No pitch, just results. 2 weeks later, it was done. 3 weeks after that, he sent a referral. Then another, then another. The new business had no name yet, but it had traction. I still had not told my brother. Not because I was hiding. Because it was not about him anymore. That was a turning point. I stopped thinking about the old company. Stopped wondering if I had been replaced, forgotten, or misrepresented. Did not care. Because for the first time in years, I was building something I believed in. On my own terms. And then one evening it happened. I was in the middle of responding to a client proposal when I got a message. It was from one of our former board advisors. Brief, direct. "Your brother is looking for you. Apparently some clients are asking why you are not on their account anymore." I sat back. Not angry. Not triumphant, just still. It was only a matter of time. Because you cannot cut out the foundation and expect the walls to stand. And I had been. The foundation in ways my brother never wanted to acknowledge. Not because I was better, because I was steady. And in business, steadiness is leverage. The funny part, I still had not spoken to him. No calls, no messages, nothing. Not because of resentment, because I had already answered the only question that mattered. What now? And the answer had become clear. What now was mine to build. The first time a former client reached out directly, it was almost awkward. Not because of what they said, but because of how gently they said it. "Hey, we noticed you're not on the team anymore. Can we still work with you somehow?" There was no pressure in their voice, just the kind of hesitation people have when they feel something is off, but do not know the politics behind it. I waited a few minutes before replying, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be clear. My answer was short. Yes, I'm building something new, quietly. Let us talk. And that was it. No bitterness, no revenge, just availability. That one conversation turned into 4 meetings, then 8, then 12. Most of them said some version of the same thing. We stayed because of you. Now that you are gone, it does not feel the same. That was not ego. That was pattern recognition. In every business, there are a few people who carry the weight others do not see, the calm voice during storms, the one who remembers things that were not written down, the person who says, "I will handle it," and actually does. I had been that for years, and now that I was gone, the weight was falling on the wrong shoulders. That is when I realized the shift was already happening, not loudly, not publicly, but real clients with real revenue were starting to call me instead of the company I had helped build. I was not advertising. I was not reaching out. I was not poaching. I was just showing up, better prepared, more aligned, and without the red tape. And word spreads quickly in small industries, especially when people feel they are being heard again. One week, a client I had not spoken to in over a year emailed me and said, "Can I introduce you to someone at our new division? We are trying to fix a mess." That someone became my largest client within 2 months. No website, no brand campaign, just reputation. It was surreal at times. I had no big logo behind me anymore, just my name, my process, and a record of not letting people down. Meanwhile, the stories coming out of my brother's version of the company were getting familiar. Meetings that made no decisions, talent walking out, clients waiting weeks for simple updates, layers of process where clarity used to live. But still, I stayed silent. There was nothing to gloat about, nothing to win, because this was not a competition. It was a correction. One night, I got dinner with a client I had worked with for nearly a decade. He was the kind of person who rarely complimented anyone. Very measured, always calculating value in real terms. Halfway through the meal, he looked at me and said, "Do you even realize how much of that company you actually were?" I just stared for a second. He said, "Seriously, people thought it was the name, the brand, the history, but it was you. Your fingerprints were on everything. Once you were gone, it all started unraveling." That sat with me because I never saw myself that way. I always thought of myself as the one behind the curtain. Quiet, reliable, not flashy. But maybe that was the point. That is why people trusted me, because I never tried to be the face. Just the one who made sure the promises made actually got delivered. That trust was now turning into business, quietly, steadily. And it was not just clients reaching out. Former employees were now messaging me. Not because they wanted jobs, but because they wanted to build. They were tired of playing internal politics, tired of watching shortcuts replace standards, tired of pretending things were fine when everyone knew they were not. And when they asked me what I was doing, I told them the truth. I am building something where people do not have to pretend. That line resonated more than I expected. Over the next few weeks, 2 of them asked to join. One part-time, one full-time. Both said the same thing. I do not care about titles. I just want to work somewhere I can be proud of again. That is when I formalized the structure, filed the paperwork, set up operations properly, hired a financial officer, got the compliance side squared away. No shortcuts. I did not want to build a reaction. I wanted to build something real. And the moment I did that, I started noticing something strange. People started referring to the old company as his, not the family business, not ours. Just his. Even clients, even people who had been around for years. And I realized something important. Ownership is not what the papers say. It is where the loyalty lives. I had lost the building. He had lost the trust, and no memo could fix that. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it ring, but something told me to answer. It was a consultant, a friend of a friend. He said he had just sat in a meeting with my brother's executive team. His words? They are trying to figure out why your name keeps coming up on their client calls. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because I had done nothing but show up. And now, somehow, that had become a threat. The consultant continued, "They are asking whether to get ahead of it by going public with a statement." I said, "A statement about what?" He replied, "That is the problem. You have not done anything wrong. They are just nervous." I thanked him for the heads up and hung up. That call told me everything I needed to know. I did not need to fight. The insecurity was doing the work for me. People were choosing, quietly. One by one. Not out of loyalty to me, but out of disappointment in what the old company had become. And still, I did not reach out to my brother. Not because I was avoiding him, because he had made his choice, and I had made mine. We had not spoken in almost a year now. And honestly, I had no interest in going backward. There was no apology that would make me want to rejoin a system that was built on erasing what mattered. I had something better now. Not just clients. Clarity. And every day I got to wake up and build without resentment, without permission, and without pretending. That is what freedom actually feels like. It is not loud. It is not defiant. It is quiet and honest, and you know it when you have it. One evening, I was reviewing a new proposal when I got an email from a client we had both worked with years ago. He said, "You have no idea how many people are rooting for you quietly." He was wrong. I had an idea. Because I was one of them, rooting for myself, finally. I did not plan on seeing him again. Not at an industry conference, not at a wedding, and definitely not on a Tuesday afternoon in an elevator I almost missed. I had a meeting with a new logistics partner downtown. Their office was in one of those glass towers with too much natural light and no sense of time. I stepped in, turned around, and there he was, same posture. Same tie style, same look in his eyes. Like every room was a performance he had to win. He nodded once. I nodded back, nothing else. The elevator was quiet, but you could feel it. That tension you only get with people who share your DNA and your history. He spoke first. "So you've been busy." That was all he said. I replied, "Busy enough." Silence again. Until the elevator stopped. I walked out. He followed, turns. Out he was there for the same meeting. Different goals, same floor. And that was the moment I realized. This was not coincidence. They were shopping for help. Help I had already been giving behind the scenes. Help they were now trying to outsource, because no one internally could fix what was broken. I sat in the glass-walled conference room, shook hands with the logistics lead, and started the discussion like I would with anyone. Professional, straightforward, results-focused. He sat across the table from me, taking notes he probably did not need to take, glancing up every few seconds like he was trying to decode how I had gotten there. He already knew the answer. He just did not want to say it out loud. The meeting ended, and the logistics partner thanked us both. Said they would follow up soon. My brother walked out beside me, kept pace, and said without looking over, "You do not have to keep doing this to prove a point." I stopped walking. "I am not proving a point," I said. "I am doing the job." He nodded like he understood, but I could tell it still bothered him. Not that I was succeeding. but that I was not trying to be seen doing it. That was the part he never understood. Visibility never built anything. We parted ways at the lobby. That night I got a call from the logistics team. They said, "We want to work with you, exclusively." I asked why. The answer was simple. "You listened. You already understood half our problems without us saying them." That is what happens when you pay attention for a decade. You stop needing introductions. In the weeks that followed, 3 more former clients signed with me. Not because I was undercutting rates, not because I had a better marketing pitch, because they were tired of dealing with an organization that kept losing the plot. No one was accountable. Every decision felt like it had to be run through 10 filters. And when things went wrong, no one admitted it. One client put it bluntly, "We miss when things just worked." I kept building. Quietly, deliberately. By now I had a small team, 5 people, all former colleagues who reached out, not because they needed a paycheck, but because they missed working somewhere where it mattered. We kept things lean. No fluff, no titles that meant nothing. Just skill, ownership, and clear roles. And it worked. We were not the biggest, but we were clean. No drama, no ego, no confusion about why we were in the room, and that showed up in results. Faster delivery, clearer communication, more retained business. But the moment that really told me how far things had come, it was when I got an email from one of the suppliers who had been working with our family business for over 15 years. Subject line, "Out of options." The message was short. "I know this might be weird, but is there a way to work directly with you again? It is getting hard to trust their process." That is when I realized this was not just about clients anymore. It was about the system. Every piece that used to function like clockwork had started to corrode, because once the center loses integrity, the whole machine starts stalling. And no, Marketing Deck can fix that. I replied politely, scheduled a call, and brought him into the fold, carefully, cleanly, and without burning bridges. And then one day, it happened. A client I had once worked with directly, one of our largest, announced they were ending their contract with the family business. No public statement. No big exit, they just stopped renewing. A month later, they showed up in my inbox. "Let us talk," the message read. It was surreal. Not because they reached out, but because it was inevitable. My brother's strategy was built on the belief that systems run themselves, that names carry weight forever, that people are replaceable, but people remember who showed up when it was hard. And now, when things were hard again, they were looking for familiar hands. It was not a celebration. It was a confirmation. I was not trying to build faster than him. I was just building without shortcuts. One afternoon, a former project manager I used to mentor sent me a message. It read, "I heard from someone that the board is getting nervous. Revenue is down. Morale is worse. And your name keeps coming up in meetings." I replied, "I have not said a word about them." She said, "That is why they are nervous. Silence sometimes says more than speeches." That week, I got a call. My brother, first time in over a year. His voice was flat. "We should talk." I paused. Not out of spite, but because I wanted to be careful with my answer. "All right," I said. "Where and when?" We met at a neutral place. No offices, no suits. Just a quiet coffee shop we used to visit back when we were planning the future, not dividing it. He looked tired, not in a weak way, in the way people look when they realize they might have misjudged what mattered. He started the conversation. "I thought if I cleaned things up, made them more efficient, we could scale faster." I nodded. "I get it." He looked at me. "But I think I misunderstood what this business actually was." I let him keep going. "It was never about being big. It was about being known, trusted. You built that, and I thought it was just operational polish. I was wrong." I said nothing. He took a deep breath. I do not expect anything from you. I just wanted to say, I know now. That moment? That was not closure. It was recognition. The kind that never comes when you force it, only when it finally becomes undeniable. We did not talk about working together again. He did not ask me to come back, and I would not have agreed anyway, because sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you care about is let them feel the full weight of the thing they tried to carry alone. I paid my bill, stood up, shook his hand. Before I left, I said one thing. I never laughed because I hated you. He looked confused. I continued. I laughed because the second you fired me, I knew I was free. You handed me the one thing you never meant to give, a clean break. He nodded slowly. I walked out. Not victorious, just clear. I was downtown again. Different meeting, same street. The building where the family business used to lease its main office was still standing. Same stone, same windows, but something had changed. The sign was gone. Not replaced. Just gone. I paused for a second, not to reminisce, just to confirm what I already suspected. I had heard whispers. From a vendor, then a former employee. Now it was visible. They had closed the flagship location, moved operations to a smaller site outside the city. The reason? Efficiency. That word again. I kept walking. I had a meeting to get to, and I was not going to be late for it. The new business was doing fine. No headlines, no viral success, just steady work, honest clients, and clean execution. That is how I wanted it. I was not trying to scale fast. I had no interest in being anyone's disruptor. I was building something that lasted because I had already seen what happened when you chased speed and ignored structure. I had a rhythm now. Projects came in. We handled them. The team was small, but skilled. No drama, no inflated roles, just accountability. And every once in a while, someone from the old world would show up. Not for gossip, not to stir anything, just to say, we miss the way things used to work. There is something deeply rewarding about hearing that, not because it flatters you, but because it validates the years you spent doing things quietly right. I never needed applause, just needed things to make sense. One of the partners we worked with regularly, a seasoned operations consultant, once asked me why I had never tried to raise capital, or pitch to a bigger firm, or expand. I told him the truth. I did not build this to sell it. I built it to keep my hands clean. He understood. Most people did not, but he did, because some people are still in this for the work, not the photo ops. And the truth is, there was more work now than ever. Not because I marketed harder, because people were finally tired of dealing with systems where nothing stuck. They were looking for clarity. For someone who did not pretend to have every answer, but knew which questions mattered most. That is where I lived now. And then one day I got another call. This one was different. It was from someone on the family business's board. A quiet one. He had always been professional, never loud, never dramatic. He asked if we could meet. Out of courtesy, I said yes. We met at a quiet restaurant just off the highway. Middle of the week, no fanfare. He got right to it. The business is bleeding. You probably already know that. I nodded. Slowly. We miscalculated, he said. He miscalculated. He meant my brother. But he was being polite. He wanted too much change. Too quickly, the board member continued. He thought he could rebuild without preserving the foundation. And now we are paying for it. I listened. I was not angry, not smug, just present. Then he said the one thing I did not expect. We would like to offer you an advisory role. I did not answer right away. He continued. Not full-time, not operational, just someone to steady the ship. Bring back what worked. Quietly. I looked him in the eye. I appreciate the offer, I said. Truly. But I have a rule now. He waited. I do not fix systems that are still pretending they are not broken. He exhaled through his nose. It was not disrespect. It was relief. He knew I was right. I offered to recommend someone I trusted, someone who could help them clean up the mess, slowly and carefully. He thanked me. We parted ways on good terms. I never heard back after that, and that was fine with me. Some things are meant to be closed gently. In the months that followed, the story unraveled the way these stories always do. The new systems failed. A few partnerships collapsed. Senior people started leaving. Then junior staff followed. Eventually, my brother stepped down. No press release, no public statement. Just a quiet shift. Someone else took the reins. Someone more experienced, less attached, hopefully more honest. I did not attend the board announcement. I was not invited, and I would not have gone anyway. That chapter had already ended for me. I was in a different phase now. I had found a rhythm. Early mornings, focused work, no noise, just progress. Sometimes I would drive by the old industrial district where we started. Nothing flashy, just warehouses and loading bays. I remembered those nights working late, fixing processes, double-checking shipments, not for glory, but because we needed things to work. And that was the piece my brother never respected. He thought being in charge meant being above the details. But leadership is not elevation. It is depth. It is seeing the whole field, not just the scoreboard. Years passed. Quietly, the new business grew. Word of mouth carried us farther than marketing ever could. Clients stayed, referred us, came back, we expanded. But carefully. A second office, then a third. Each one run by someone I knew personally, someone I had worked beside, not above. We kept overhead low. We never overpromised. And we kept doing the one thing most people forget to do. Listen. One day, a former employee from the old company reached out. She had been laid off during a restructuring, said she was not looking for a handout, just a chance to do real work again. I brought her in. No titles, just tasks. Within 3 months, she was running a division, because when you remove the noise, talent shows up quickly. The most surprising moment came when I was invited to speak at a regional logistics conference, not on stage, just a panel. They wanted me to talk about sustainability and distribution networks. I said yes. Halfway through the panel, someone from the crowd asked, "What is the biggest mistake people make when they take over an old business?" I smiled slightly, and I said, "They confuse change with improvement. Not everything that is different is better." The room went quiet. Not because it was profound, but because it was true. After the session, someone shook my hand and said, "You do not sound like a guy who used to run a big company." I replied, "I sound like someone who used to build it." He laughed. Then he said something I will never forget. "There is a difference." Yes, there is. And now? Now I live on that difference. I wake up without dread. I take meetings that matter, work with people I respect, and I go home knowing I never sold out the foundation that built me. My brother and I have not spoken in years. Not out of anger, just distance. Sometimes that is healthier than pretending things can go back to what they were. We both made our choices. He chased image, I chased clarity, and at the end of it, I did not win anything. I just kept what was real. And for the first time in years, I sleep just fine.